Chapter 10. The Donic Lehiakoter Ceremony of Surrender. Surrender? Who's surrendering? Nelith blinked. The administration of the Aptic star system, said Nephi. The administration of the Aptic star system. Then it came back to him. Oh, right, they hadn't surrendered yet. So you forgot. Not that that's particularly shocking. Then, Aptic's gone and filed a notice of surrender? It's not official yet. But we've just intercepted a land-world broadcast. Care to watch? Sure. I love land-world broadcasts. There's always so much crazy stuff to see out there, he said, settling into his commander's seat. Nephi worked the controls, and a window screen appeared before Nelith. In that screen spoke an aging lander male. Citizens of the system, he said, his words dubbed into I, Star System Premier Makrit Talis, have had to make the hardest decision of my life. And though I may have secured the blessings of the cabinet and of parliament, my sorrow remains great. As you the citizens are already aware, the Imperial Army has urged us to accept their counsel to surrender, with extremely high-handed vociferousness. Hold on a second. As soon as Nelith interrupted, the video paused. Counsel to surrender? Did you counsel them? I did not, said Nephi, shaking his head. Then who? As far as I know, no one. If you counseled them to surrender on your own without telling us, that'd be one thing, but the Star Forces have never formally issued any such thing to the Aptic government. You know it can't have been me. Yes, I know. You'd never do anything that savvy. Nelith growled, but decided to wait a while before retorting. And what's this about our high-handedness? No idea. Who'd urge them to accept a counsel to surrender we never even gave them? You might, Nephi. When all is said and done, you are a Biboth. Well, in your case, Nelith, you might have hectored them, and then forgotten about it afterwards. After all, at the end of the day, you're a Biboth. And with that, Nelith's confidence took a plunge. He checked his journal log on his wrist gear, which vouched for the fact that he'd never issued a counsel to surrender, nor impelled them to accept it. Looks like it wasn't me. I know it wasn't you, Nelith, Nephi, strangely softly, after having looked on with a stunned expression as Nelith checked his log. No one is or would ever seriously doubt you on that. Now, can we resume watching? Yes. Unpause it. Unfrozen. The Premier's body came back to life and the audio returned. The United Humankind dispatched a fleet in order to rescue us. Wait, that fleet was there to save the peoples of Aptic, mumbled Nelith, but this time he refrained from having the video be paused again. Have we done wrong? Yet sadly, on this day, that fleet's hard-fought struggle came to no avail, repelled by the interlopers. It is truly unfortunate. And it doesn't take eyes in the sky to foresee the catastrophic damage that would befall our military should we resist. Citizens, I beg of you. The Premier began sobbing, overcome with emotion. It would be easy to simply sit here and continue to hope the United Humankind comes to save us. Hold on, how even could they? Now that the Star Forces have seized the portals, by what means can they even contact the UH capital? But nobody answered Nelith's query. But you must understand that the UH has a duty to many more star systems across the galaxy. And while this one system is irreplaceable to us, we cannot seriously ask them to bring even more fleets into harm's way in trying to liberate Aptic. Instead, we should hope for the UH's overall victory in the war. Aptic Star System Premier Makrit Talis, have come to realize that we have no other choice but to surrender to the Av Empire. Do note, however, that this is but a momentary ordeal. And I believe we must have faith in that fact and overcome this tribulation together. Well, if you hate the idea of surrendering that much, why bother, said Nelith, biting lightly the knuckle of his index finger. What say we tell them nobody's actually issued a counsel to surrender? I don't know about that. Has it occurred to you that His Excellency the Premier might in fact be lying? Lying? Really? The chances are high. We don't have any detailed information on that planet, but almost a month has passed since its capture. It's no wonder if their economy is on the brink of collapse. They might be facing shortages of necessary goods. Which is why I wouldn't be surprised if they now want to become part of the Empire's economic sphere. And that would make surrendering quickly an enlightened proposition. They know the Three Nations Alliance won't be returning to Aptic anytime soon. So it's an exceedingly logically sound move to throw in the towel before their economy collapses in earnest. But then, why invent this council to surrender? Don't ask me, Nelith. Only, I should remind you that we, too, slightly embellish the truth in matters of commerce. I think it's a similar phenomenon happening here. I see. Then I can understand where they're coming from, said Nelith, convinced. I bet you that the notice of surrender will be coming from the system administration any time now. I think so, too, so there's no need to bet on it. That's too bad. Question, Nife, who'll be the one to receive that notice? Nife's eyes went wide. Isn't it obvious? Tell me who? No way it's me, right? Who else could it be besides you? I don't know you, maybe, said Nelith. Please, Nelith, give it a rest. Think of how the land peoples would feel if the chief of staff takes the place of a commander-in-chief in receiving their surrender. They'd think we were belittling them. You, taking the feelings of the land peoples into consideration? I guess miracles do happen. To think you'd spare a thought towards another's feelings. We Ovs have never much cared what land peoples think of us, but that being said, it's me who has to listen to their cutting remarks. That's what I'm concerned about. I don't know the first thing about His Excellency the Premier. I'm worried that he has jibes so caustic they're practically works of art in store for me. Of course, Nelith gave his twin a look of pity. The Biboth clan doesn't fit in during formal situations like rituals, and you are the very picture of a Biboth. If you're confident you aren't the very picture of a Biboth yourself, then why don't you hold the surrender ritual yourself? Nelith shuddered. He'd much rather be seen as the exemplar of Biboth madness than hold the ritual himself. But he knew Nife was in the right. After a while, Nelith came up with a perfect solution. Instead of going by Star Force's rank, why don't we go by whoever's highest in the imperial hierarchy? There must be a noble who's higher ranked than me. Upon seeing Nife's eyes go wide once again, a bad feeling beset Nelith. The Biboth clan was a storied line, but Nelith and Nife belonged to a branch named the Aaron Naramur. The surname of Aaron indicated he had not inherited a star fief from his parent, but that he was nevertheless a noble, and that his line had been aristocratic since the founding of the empire. Furthermore, he had only succeeded to the rank of noble prince, which, along with noble princess, was the lowest rank above that of knight first class. That being said, since Nelith was also a Grand Commodore, he had gained the title of Rudrayo Imperial Count. The rank didn't come with any territory and only lasted a single generation, but so long as he drew breath and didn't cause some unspeakable scandal, he would, at the imperial court, enjoy all of the courtesies a bona fide count received. In other words, if there were no nobles around higher than count in rank, then he was the highest-ranked person in the Aptic defensive fleet, both in terms of military rank and in terms of the imperial hierarchy. And counts weren't exactly a dime a dozen, including in the military. There isn't anybody, is there? Asked Nelith, afraid to hear the answer. Worry not. Though I'm as astonished as ever by just how little you know. Then there is somebody. It was such welcome news that he didn't even mind the jab. And she's no mere noble. She's an imperial. Her Highness the Viscountess of Parian. In fact, there's even another count, His Excellency the Count of Hyde. Count Hyde? That name rang a bell. Oh, I remember now. The young man who conquered that land world alongside Her Highness the Viscountess. The word conquered would be a slight embellishment. They say Her Highness the Viscountess took the land world with a single, solitary light gun. Tell me, Nelith, is it your information source that's off-kilter, or your memory? Either way, you've taken a departure from reality. There are detailed records of that incident, you know. I have no interest in the truth. The fiction is typically much more entertaining. You're not wrong. But wait, that's exactly the attitude that has soured our clan's reputation. Just think, those two famed figures, under my command, said Nelith, not paying attention. I don't mind waiting until you have the time on your hands, but please, you simply must teach me the secret behind how you can remain so ignorant as to your own fleet. What would be the point of knowing? What, would I position her someplace safe and implore her not to get hurt? That is a frightening scenario you've dreamed up, Nelith. So you see, whenever a member of that clan thinks they've strayed unfairly far from danger, they tend to blow their lid, or at least come close. They appear to regard flinging themselves into the fire as an intrinsic right. That's why knowing she was in my fleet would have changed nothing. I can't direct her ship any differently from the others. By the way, which ship is Her Highness aboard? If I recall correctly, her rank is Deca Commander. But he couldn't recall her ship offhand, so he looked it up on his wrist gear. I knew it, she is a Deca Commander. She was the captain of the assault ship Bossroar. What do you mean was? The Bossroar is no more. But Her Highness came out unscathed. Don't worry, there's nothing stopping you from making her Rolusagak, Imperial Representative. Then it's settled. Though if she's an assault ship captain, her crew is a small one. We'll have to send an administration officer from headquarters. That, you just have to get done yourself. Yeah, and we'll have to make the preparations for the signature venue and the post-signing celebratory feast here at headquarters too. Right. I'll handle the arrangements, so don't fret. I do want your adjutant's help though. Can I borrow them for a bit? Sure. I'll tell them. Actually, I just remembered. What? About the post-signing celebratory banquet? Yes. What about it? Well, it's just that while it's certainly something to celebrate for us, adding another inhabited planet to the Empire, it's not for them. So I was wondering if we should still keep the name of the banquet as the celebratory feast. I and the adjutant will deal with the annoying particulars. But we'll have Her Highness fill the role of Imperial Representative, and His Excellency the Count of Hyde will serve as Ru Roilasagak, Secondary Imperial Representative. As such, Nelith, yes, Nife. The least you can do is give the name of the function a think. The first thing the assault ship Bossroar's carrycraft did was to hitch alongside the Gaziak, med ship, Karsaic, and transfer over all of the casualties. Afterward, they headed toward the base Canteen de Kruk, which had been designated the resting camp for crew members of destroyed ships. The passenger seating of the carrycraft consisted of individual crystal ceramic planks with elastic cushiony material affixed to each. They were also equipped with safety belts. Whenever the vessel underwent acceleration, they were just like sleeping bunks to lie down on, and when microgravity held sway inside, it didn't much matter whether one was sleeping, standing, or sitting. Leifier was lying relaxed on the foremost seat. Meanwhile, the carrycraft was decelerating, its stern facing de Kruk. Eventually, a small impact shock coursed through the ship, signaling they were accelerating no longer. Sabash, the ship's pilot, was no slouch at the task. Now that microgravity had taken effect, she wasted no time releasing the safety belt, drifting into the air and reporting to headquarters that they'd arrived through her wrist gear. Once she was done delivering the report, she looked up to find the surviving crew members staring in her direction. All NCCs are permitted to disembark. By my authority as captain, I grant you 24 hours rest. I will inform you of where we will be assembling before the end of the break period, so take it easy until then, said Leifier, but the cheers were half-hearted. Not only was the crew tired, but many had lost friends and comrades. In fact, aboard a vessel of assault ship size, everyone knew everyone. The star pilots are to stand by, she added. As she watched the NCCs get off the ship, the other star pilots gathered around her. I can't authorize a break for you three just yet. That's a bummer, said Samson. However, as there's no mission to follow at the moment, I do authorize you to conduct yourselves freely. Just keep in mind that we may have to reassemble on an emergency basis at any time. Well, I guess you're just being realistic, Samson shrugged. Then he faced Sabash. What do you say to a drink celebrating the survivors, senior star pilot? I'm all for it, Lie-Wing star pilot, grinned Sabash. But this time, don't fall asleep on me. I really don't feel like opening your mouth and making you gulp down a sobriety pill. It won't come to that, don't you worry. And so the two took their leave. Come to think of it, thought Leifier, we never drank the rest of Hecto Commander Ados Raiwa's apple cider. Oh well. It's not as though I particularly like apple cider. Ekriua showed Jint the carrier in her hands. Can I take him with me? He seems like he could use some exercise. Needless to say, the carrier's furry occupant was none other than Daiho. Yeah, sure. Jint smiled bittersweetly. Sorry, I'm an irresponsible pet owner. Tell that to the cat. It's fine, he's an irresponsible cat, so we deserve each other. Is that so? And so Akrua saluted before disembarking. "What are you gonna do now, Leifier?" asked Jint. "I haven't decided yet," she said, shaking her head. "What about you?" "I dunno, what do I do?" Jint cocked his head, and as a result started rotating in midair. Then he grabbed hold of a seat and held his body in place. "Would you care to dine with me, Your Highness?" "I appreciate the offer, but I'm not really hungry at the moment." "Well, there goes that idea. So, what do we do?" "Don't be so daft. Just go eat by yourself." "Thing is, I'm not that hungry, either." "Then why did you invite me for a meal?" she asked, not getting Jint's intentions at all. "Don't trouble yourself over it. From time to time, I just act on a whim," he sighed. At that moment, their wrist gears beeped, indicating a message was received. Leifier read the freshly sent message. Then she frowned. "Me, a secondary Imperial representative," squeaked Jint, his voice going funny. He, too, had read his message. "Why have I got to do such stupid? Because you're under orders. You have no other choice." Leifier was hardly gung-ho about the idea herself, but she had no right to object. They were now enjoined to accept the Aptic star system's surrender on behalf of the Empire. "But I'm just a Lie-Wing star pilot. Why would such a big role go to me?" "Because you're also a count, obviously," said Leifier. "I see. So this is just another thing that comes with the rank." The message wasn't long at all, yet Jint's eyes lingered. "But then, this means I have to attend as a count, right?" "Of course," said Leifier, wondering what the issue was. "My non-uniform clothing and my count circlet is now interstellar matter along with the rest of the Bosroar. Which I think is a bit of a problem." "Oh, you're right." Leifier hadn't carried out the article she adorned herself with as a royal princess either. At the royal palace of Cryeb, located in the imperial capital of Lokfakar, she had clothing and accessories enough to fill the hold of a small ship, but there wasn't enough time to send out for any. After all, the signing ceremony was scheduled for 3 days from now. Still, with regard to their attire, they were in the clear, seeing as de Kruk had several clothing stores. They could put together some appropriate raiment. They could even probably find accessories, though not easily. The real concern was her royal princess's circlet. One couldn't find one in any store, not even in Lokfakar. "Jint, you're about to become a busy man. You are, among other things, my clerk." "I'm thrilled," said Jint glumly. "Now I won't have to think of how to kill all this time." Those 3 days would be a whirlwind for the hapless pair. They were forced to arrange for everything down to their own outfits during the intervals between meetings with the preparatory committee for the surrender signing ceremony that headquarters had established for the occasion. In Jint's case, the circlet problem proved simple enough to solve. His circlet had no spatiosensory perception functionality, it was entirely decorative. Moreover, the wrist gear that was attached to his person contained the specs for the circlet of the Count of Hyde. From there, all it took was to recreate one using the equipment aboard a repair ship, and he obtained it in a half a day's time. Only, the synthetic jewels used as replacements were of much shabbier quality than the real deal's jewels had been. Not that Jint, who'd rarely ever held his count's circlet in hand, even noticed before the officer in charge of carrying out his request apologized about it to him. Arranging Leifier's ensemble, on the other hand, proved more of a hassle. All the clothing stores on de Kruk contained were pale imitations, made under the assumption that they'd eventually be turned to plasma during some space scuffle. In the end, it was decided that her long robe would have to be specially sewn. The jumpsuit underneath would be her regular military uniform. The long robe would hide the rank insignia anyway, and so the Landworlders would never know she was only what the UH would categorize as a lieutenant. As for the royal princess's circlet, that proved most difficult of all. Unlike Jint's non-Frocross-enabled circlet, hers was a real one, allowing her the personal radar she enjoyed on a daily basis. Incorporating that gadgetry while also adding the exquisite ornamentation befitting an Imperial was a load too heavy for the repair ships of the Aptic defensive fleet. Furthermore, it took time to fine-tune a circlet for its wearer. Ultimately, all they could do was decorate her standard military-issue circlet with similar embellishments. In addition, the jewels used for this makeshift circlet were akin to glass balls compared to the originals, which were synthesized by jewelry masters with great care and attention, and sculpted with the utmost fineness. But the royal princess resolved to make do. As for the venue for the ceremony, the supply ship Ryumsith would be chosen for the honor. Strewn on the floor of its hold, which was also packed with mobile space-time mines, lay flakes of synthetic gemstone, and the walls and ceilings were decorated in lavish fashion. This was all done by a work crew under the direct command of headquarters. Lafier and Jint were not involved. Another aspect the two lacked any involvement with was one that vexed command the most: the paper. Aside from specific instances of cultural preservation, humanity had abandoned paper as a storage medium long ago, and the Ov were no exception. Yet paper was essential for formalized cross-cultural pacts like theirs. The Glagakbyrer, fleet flagship, had around a ream of sheets of paper in stock if ever the area's military needed to accept an enemy star system surrender. Or it would have, had the budget branch not forgotten to stock that paper. And nobody had noticed until now, the moment it was required. At once, the pharmaceutical branch was ordered to produce paper as the Lodir Kruer, pharmaceutical star pilots, were thought to be the closest thing on hand to experts on paper, but for them, this task proved quite the pain in the neck. Figuring all they needed were a few sheets of paper, they reviewed the technical information stored in the CompuCrystal net, destroyed the few wood products they had around for raw materials, and finally, on the morning of the day of the ceremony, made 16 whole sheets. While all this was happening, it was senior star pilot Sabash who maintained command of the former crew of the Bosroar. Of course, since the ship was no more, and they were not made to help with preparations for the ceremony, all he could do was extend their temporary break period, including for himself. Samson drank by the bucketful while Ekriua deepened her bond with Daiho, until at last, the day arrived. "Wow, it's surprisingly imposing," said Jint, scanning the assembly place. It may have been a dash job of 3 days, carried out by a temporary fleet, but it looked nothing short of exquisite. An onyx-like pattern adorned the floor, and a stately wooden desk sat at the center. To the sides, Star Force's star pilots and high-ranking star system officials stood in their lines, while the Landworld's press corps were camped in a corner. Meanwhile, the Biboth twins, who by all rights should have been the central figures of the day's pomp, were blending in with the rest of the attendees. Finally, from the ceiling were suspended 2 flags, the Imperial Crest banner and what could only be the flag of the star system's government. "What did you expect?" said Lafier. "To us, this is an everyday function, but to the land world, this will alter the course of their history." An everyday function, huh? The Empire did boast more than 1,500 inhabited star systems. And while more than half were built up by the Ov themselves, the number of systems they had conquered was no small figure. They'd gone through the motions of accepting star systems surrender countless times already. That much was certainly true. Yet Jint, who himself hailed from a planet so conquered, harbored mixed feelings, and the fact that that planet's system was now technically his own fief didn't help matters. His Excellency Makrit Talis, Premier of the Aptic Star System, shouted the Lushiak Bioer fleet adjutant. At that moment, the middle-aged man on the opposite side of the venue from Jint pushed forward. "Their Excellencies, Aptic Star System Executive Council Chairperson Sap Rickfest and Aptic Star System Lead Supreme Court Justice Una Fajils." When their names were called, each high official stepped toward the desk. Then it was the Imperial representative's turn. Her Highness Avrielsek ne Duberskreber Perian Lamher, representative of the Humankind Empire of Ov. Once the adjutant's summons was translated into the common language of the UH, it caused a stir amidst the star system government side. They must not have ever expected a bearer of the title of Fee to appear before them. A number of their faces lit up with a visible contentment and, yes, even pride. The hem of Lafier's long robe waved in the air as she approached the desk. His Excellency Lean Cyan Roke Dryor Hader Jint, secondary representative of the Humankind Empire of Ov. Once Jint's name was called, the stir grew greater still. Only, they weren't struck by the presence of a count. Rather, the fact that this noble was clearly a landworlder had thrown them. But Jint was already quite accustomed to this reaction. It was even nostalgic, in a way. And so, The representatives of both sides were now together, the desk the only object between them. Jin took the document from out of his long robe's breast pocket and unrolled it. As Imperial Secondary Representative, I shall read the conditions of surrender. Talus and the other star system officials stared at Jint, their eyes brimming with overflowing curiosity. Jint ignored them and raised the parchment to eye level. The Aptic star system will transfer all of its sovereignty and dominion to the humankind empire of Ov, including that which it ceded to the united humankind, and it will hereafter comply with empire law as a territory nation. After he was finished reading out the surrender conditions, Jint laid them before the premier alongside a memchip containing the laws of the empire. The provisions of imperial law had been presented to the star system government beforehand, enumerating the various obligations of a so-called territory nation. These included the prohibition of interstellar navigation, the requirement of their lord or lady's approval to become a land-world citizen representative, and the non-negotiable establishment of a Star Forces recruiting office. With Jint's responsibility fulfilled, Leifier retrieved another document. Should the Empire make demands in excess of the scope outlined in the law, the Land-World Administration bears the right to decline, as acknowledged here. Leifier then laid it down in front of her and took a pointed writing implement known as a scriven brush in hand. Sign here if you so please, Jint told Talus. Yes, he nodded, drawing out a fountain pen, an artifact of a bygone age, to write his signature. Leifier checked the signature and jotted her own beautifully curvaceous, stylized signature onto her document before the two exchanged papers. Though this is a pact I sign begrudgingly, we have here forged a new relationship nevertheless. Talus proffered a hand. Leifier looked totally confused. Your Excellency, Jint interjected, I'm terribly sorry, but shaking hands isn't an off-custom. I see, embarrassed, he withdrew his hand. I am aware that this is not a joyful turn of events for Your Excellency or for the system's honorable peoples, but all the same, I welcome you to the jurisdiction of the Empire, said Leifier, bowing her head slightly. I promise that as soon as possible, a lord or lady, or else a magistrate, will be assigned to this territory nation. In the meantime, I, the Viscountess of Parian, will act as Kferiak, Lady Agent. Is this amenable to you? In reality, it didn't matter whether they found this amenable. The land-world citizens had no actual say. Her query was merely a formality. Now, in my capacity as Lady Agent, I shall hereby approve of the land-world citizen representatives. Whom do you desire as the foremost representative? The people elected me, said Talus. Does Your Excellency plan to incite or plot specific action against the Empire in order to secede? She asked. No. I will keep such thoughts as fantasies in my head, he replied. Unless that, too, is a crime? We have no intention of interfering with your inner life, she answered with the gravest solemnity. I approve you for the role of land-world citizen representative. And with those words, the Aptic Star System Administration under the United Humankind was dissolved, and instantly replaced by the Humankind Empire of Ov's Druhan Aptisur, Count Dom of Aptic.